Welcome to a special Retro Rewind episode of Retro Logic covering Odama. I am here with LPD, aka Liam, one of the hosts of Retro Groove, as well as Philip, aka Flightsy, one of the, or the only, our sole Price is Retro
archivist.
Archivist, yes. And we are here to talk about Odama-rama, all things Odama. Odama for the GameCube. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. I have never actually gotten to meet Philip face to face before. And Philip is the wonderful person who takes the opportunity to remind everybody on the Retro Logic crew of my epic record-breaking loss on Price is Retro, and I appreciate it. I love getting my name brought up every so often, and that it's pretty great.
I haven't calibrated season 2, but I am afraid that you have in fact been beaten by like the $12,000 thing.
Oh man!
But as long as I don't calculate season 2 because life is really busy, you'll remain talked about, which is good.
I'll always hold the season 1 trophy. I'll take it.
That is true. But unfortunately, again, over here, the Wi-Fi issue, it's been a very kind of stressful week. I had like 2 exams, a speech to give. The Wi-Fi has been cutting out all week. And like on Monday or like on Tuesday, I got like, there was a mass email warning people that they detected cheating and they were going to start giving out violations.
Whoa.
And I misread the header and I thought it was personally addressed to me.
Oh my god!
So I started freaking out thinking, wait, when did this happen? How did this happen? I never did that. And then I was like, oh wait, no. After an hour of checking through my notation to see how that could have happened, I looked and I was like, oh wait, no, they're addressing everyone. And that panic attack happened at midnight, so it took out of my sleep schedule for the test the next day. It's been a week.
Yeah, that could lead you to cheating, losing that kind of sleep, and you're like, oh, maybe I better cheat then. Man.
Well, it's been a time trying to get this recording scheduled, so I thank you guys for making it happen. This has been kind of a long way in the works, probably in some ways ever since Plock. I remember on a previous episode, as the Plock fervor was going up, just boldly proclaiming that Odama was the new Plock. And my dream has somewhat come true, it seems. I've managed to get some other people to bite on it. And I bear pretty much the sole responsibility for this one, I think. I don't know if you guys would have bought Odama if it weren't for me. So...
Oh, no, definitely not.
Yeah. So I have to take responsibility for that, I suppose.
Yeah, it was fun to watch because this is one of those where people had to go out and buy more than just the game. I mean, most people had a console to play it on, but you can't just get a ROM for this one and you can't just play it with existing hardware. You needed to go out and get the microphone as well, which fortunately wasn't too expensive, but it was really neat to see a bunch of people get those in the mail throughout the weeks leading up to all of this and post their pictures in the Discord. It's pretty neat.
I'm surprised that you can't hook up a ROM for this because, I mean, I know you can do voice commands in various video games on the computer, so I'm surprised you can't rig up something or even that Dolphin doesn't even have an option for like the microphone, because I'd figure that'd be a pretty primitive microphone compared to what we have now.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely not one of the first features an emulator would add, just like all the special chips in different Super Nintendo games. I know like stuff like Yoshi's Island took a long time for emulators to crack just because of some of the stuff in there. But all the same, I'm glad that some other people have come to share my enthusiasm, and I can still one episode at the very end. Dan just kind of left an open question hanging in the air for any like closing comments. And he just started to crack up as soon as he saw me, just because I'd already like lost my mind over Odama earlier in the episode, and I just kind of slowly leaned very forward into my mic, and he knew I was going to say Odama-rama. And now the day has finally come.
Can I ask, like, how you came across? Like, I don't know if I know the genesis of how you came to Odama. I know you go on deep dives and unearth RPGs and Japan exclusive things or whatever, but where did this one come from for you, since you are the patient zero?
Yeah, so really, it's kind of a pretty by the numbers thing. I was getting more interested in retro, after Retro Logic launched. I wasn't a host yet, but I was definitely thinking about retro games a lot more than I had been. I never really stopped having an interest there, but I definitely wasn't combing through old games and thinking about how much they cost and which ones were worth picking up right away. But there was a lot of talk about GameCube games and how they'd gotten so expensive. And I was like, okay, let's, I was just kind of curious how true that was, to what extent, how expensive we were talking. And I was just looking at lists of Nintendo first party GameCube games. And I'm like, here's a GameCube game that's Nintendo first party that I have literally never heard of. And it's actually not too expensive. At the time it was charting like less than $15 for a loose copy. Complete in box was around like 16. It's gone up a bit since then, but it's still not a hugely in demand game
because of
and then I was like, I wonder what that is. And I looked it up and I'm like, this is a game unlike literally anything else. So of course I had to buy it, because I just like novelty games, even if they're weird or even if they have flaws. I really just like seeing games that do something completely different.
Sweet.
And so, we can talk about that for those uninitiated. I don't know why you're listening to this if you have no idea what Odama is, but maybe you're curious. It's been called a military pinball game. It combines RTS elements where the player primarily commands troops using the GameCube microphone, which was packaged with the game as a bundle. But also at the same time, you are controlling a pinball called the Odama, a giant steel ball larger than a person that just careens across the battlefield and crushes to death enemy and friend alike. With the primary objective being for your bell team to carry the Ninten bell to the end of the stage. Some stages also have other sort of objectives to build bridges and the like to make that possible, as well as defeat bosses who are in your way. But that's the principle of it, is there is a bell moving across the stage and enemy troops that will push it back. And the Odama is rolling around and you have to use that to your advantage, by rolling over enemy troops, destroying barriers, and hitting the bell to create shockwaves. Primarily, that's the gist of it.
Now, Philip, did you have a GameCube when you were growing up? You're a bit younger than Sam and I.
No, I do not. I did not try to have a GameCube. My first console was the Wii.
So you kind of had a GameCube then, maybe.
I kind of had a GameCube, and actually, I only found out about the GameCube functionality of the Wii when I had a Wii U, and which is still now. Actually, I never got rid of the Wii U, but
good call.
So I still haven't gotten many GameCube things, even though I did actually get a GameCube, because basically for the Game Boy Player, actually.
Which is not cheap.
Yeah, and my Wii broke, so I figured get 2 in 1. But ironically, one of the first games I think I got, I basically looked up, because the Mario Party games aren't too bad on there, so I was like, well, what's the best Mario Party? And I looked at the list and it said Mario Party 6, and that
Who
comes
said
with
that?
The best GameCube Mario Party.
I don't know. I like 4 a lot, but I'll give you 6. That's fine. I like 6.
It's the most popularly rated GameCube Mario Party, at least. And it comes with the microphone, and the microphone in that game is 100% not required. You can play the entire game without it. It's completely optional, which is a common misconception. But I was like, I should get a microphone. It'd be cool because it works with the Wii. So I actually had a GameCube microphone going into Odama because I'd happened to have one to get Mario Party 6.
Amazing.
To play on the Wii before the Wii broke. And then,
wait, you said the microphone works on the Wii. You mean in relation to GameCube games or for Wii games?
No, it's in relation to GameCube games.
Okay.
If you want to play it with Wii games, you need Wii Speak.
Right. I was going to say it's a totally different microphone that serves no function. Serves a very slim function. Sorry.
I mean, the GameCube microphone wasn't very highly utilized. So to make up for this, the Wii Speak was utilized even less.
Even less, yeah. Well, I'd love to, if I could use that to transition. I just wrote up 3 quick little trivia games that kind of can break the ice on this, I think, a little bit, if you guys are down. They're not too hard, but if you're down for it, and speaking of Mario Party 6, do either of you know the other GameCube games that, other than Odama, that utilized the GameCube microphone?
I do.
Go for it, Philip. No, shout it out.
I didn't know if I didn't want to interrupt, so I didn't know how
to
exactly to say that. But I do, in fact, know this because I looked it up as soon as I played Odama because I was so impressed by the Odama's ability to use voice commands that I wanted to look up if it was literally hyperbole to say it was the best utilization of the GameCube microphone. So I looked up the other usages, and I would like to talk about Odama and what I like about that game. But
we will.
To answer your question, Mario Party 6, Mario Party 7,
right?
A quiz show game. There's a quiz show game that uses it. And there's a few like Easter eggs where Chibi Robo will fall down if you speak in the microphone.
That's, I see, and I learned that just recently. So there's a karaoke game that also uses it. Karaoke Revolution, something or other. Karaoke Revolution Party. But Chibi Robo,
I didn't know any of those other than Mario Party.
Yeah, so Chibi Robo, it doesn't advertise it. You'd never know it. But if you plug in the microphone and you shout at him, or if you say Chibi Robo, he'll kind of pop up a little question mark. And if you yell into the microphone, he just collapses on the floor for a minute because you scared him. But it's not advertised anywhere. You'd never know it unless you just plugged in the microphone and decided to yell at your TV randomly, or yell at a little robot on your TV on a game that no one played. All right. Next question. So Odama, as I think Sam might have mentioned, was the last actual Nintendo published GameCube exclusive released. It was released in March 2006, right before the Wii would take the world by storm. But it was the second to last GameCube game that was released and published by Nintendo. Do you guys know what the actual last Nintendo published, Nintendo released GameCube game was?
I actually don't know.
It's Twilight Princess.
It's Twilight Princess. And that's and
I had to think for a second. I'm like, I know this.
The hint is in the question because Odama is technically a GameCube exclusive. Twilight Princess isn't really a GameCube exclusive because most people played it on the Wii. And then the last question I have for you. So this game was first showcased at E3 2004. And if you look back at the early reviews and previews, there's actually no conversation about the microphone because the microphone hadn't come out yet. And so I don't know if it was something that was behind closed doors, but the game was previewed at E3 2 years before it releases. So back in 2004, people are looking at this game, playing this game without the microphone, and they were told on site that they were going to do something else to add immersion to the game that wasn't voice command related. Do you have any idea what they were considering doing for this game, not microphone related, that is also completely off the wall?
I think I remember reading about this somewhere.
Okay.
I think it was the bongos for the Donkey Kong bongos.
They were going to try to integrate the bongos into it. And then when the game reappears in 2005 at E3, no bongos, but a microphone, which is the way to go. I mean, Dan, he's not here, so, he can't hyper defend the DK bongos. They're a cool peripheral. Don't use them in an RTS pinball game.
it would, the main advantage of the voice commands, because I do want to talk, I have a whole spiel about the voice commands, but I keep brushing on it. But the main advantage of the voice commands is that like you could access them without moving. Like it would be so cumbersome to have to like move, like let go of the controller to like whap a thing.
Yeah, I think it was that you would have them on your lap with the controller, and then when you needed to do certain things, you would hit a bongo and it would like rally the troops or make them go left or right or something like that. It was never showed, so you can only speculate. But it's an interesting idea. Sam, you want to talk a little bit about and enlighten us on the way of heavenly duty, I think, right? The way of Nintendo.
Oh, yes. So Odama has a very interesting and very convoluted backstory. If you are familiar with Ute Saito's other work, predominantly Seaman, this is right up the same alley. If you look in the instruction booklet for Seaman, you'll get a whole history of Seaman and how he was like worshipped as a god in ancient Egypt and stuff. And the story of Odama actually purports to be the secret, hidden, lost history of Nintendo. So we are told, very facetiously by the narrator, this actually is explained in game too by a narrator who, by the way, is actually like a very famous Japanese actor. It was like a big deal that they got this guy to be the narrator in Odama and to be the advisor. Yeah. Basically it says that, there are these two secrets that your side of the war has behind them. One is the Odama itself, and the Nintendo Bell, and the secret doctrine of Nintendo, which we are told is an abbreviation of three Japanese proverbs. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Ningamushin, Tenzai Korin, and Dogitsume, which are three different proverbs, which together form the doctrine of Nintendo, which we are told is the true origin of the code of Bushido.
You did great. That was awesome. Didn't butcher that at all. I couldn't have done it. So Hideji Otaki is the voice actor, right? And I'm not familiar with him or whatever, but it sounds like, or in certain interviews, it sounds like Ute Saito was over the moon. Like he heard his voice when he was making this game as the one that he wanted to carry this. And he really does. I mean, there's no music in this game other than I think you guys experienced a little tunage that I did not, because I, out of the three of you, did not finish the game. And I think you're rewarded with the only music in the game at the end, correct? Spoilers. This is a spoiler show, by the way.
Yes. Yes, I presume we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Is it a jam though? Is it a good payoff with the song at the end? Yeah. Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do just a speculative point off of what you were talking about, Sam, about the plot of this. So there had been talk. So Ute Saito developing Seaman and is actually, because he is a mad scientist, and we know plenty of them that work at Nintendo, specifically Miyamoto. He and Mr. Saito strike up a friendship, and there's talks of initially putting Seaman out through the 64DD add-on on the Nintendo 64. And I think that the lack of a microphone and the failure of the 64DD was a 1-2 punch that, Sega was easily able to swoop in and rectify. But there's a bunch of interviews where Ute Saito talks about how much he respects and celebrates how Nintendo will take risks and kind of forego big profits to do something interesting. There's something very cool about the plot of this game being a crusade for the way of Nintendo, right? And then him just waving the banner for this kind of innovative experimental spirit. It almost feels like there's a little bit of an allegorical thing going in here where you are fighting against the powers that have suppressed you, and like in this innovative way are trying to carry the good word on this crusade through this absurd video game to like break through everything. And then like you wind up pushing through and doing there's a time jump and everything. Like it seems like this is a little bit of a love fest or a love letter to what makes Nintendo so great, which is a very odd thing to find in a pinball game, right?
Yeah. And one of the other things that I point out, both times I've streamed this game, I've taken the time to read it on stream from the manual, is the note from the developers. So if you do pick up this game, like I said, it's not very expensive to get complete in box. Even the microphone bundle is not terribly expensive. But this is a manual worth a read just because of some of that added content. And this note from the developers is oddly sincere and poignant for a game that is just so goofy. It says, I'll just pick up towards the end. It says, of course, there is no real historical precedent for the use of a weapon like the Odama on an actual battlefield, but the social structures depicted in the game did truly exist in 16th century Japan. In those times as well, behind every famous general stood a nameless but loyal multitude that fought in his name. What did these soldiers think and feel as they marched toward the inevitable? Keep this question in mind as you play, and you will come closer to experiencing the feelings that compelled us to make this game. Only when you have seen the exhaustion these men felt in battle can you truly understand the question, what is victory?
And yet they build in a game mechanic where there's friendly fire. Like the entire game mechanic is built around the fact that you can just as easily crush your own men as you can the enemy's men. Like that is raw. Yes. That is brutal.
That's almost hammering in the metaphor more. Like a bad general, while the general themselves is really not too threatened by the Odama, their reckless actions and leadership can cause harm to their own troops. So it's part of the metaphor.
But it's interesting because it's not, all doom and gloom about it. It's like, look, these guys still believe in you. Be careful, but like you can do it.
Well, I don't know. When I got to Kurosawa River 2, my morale was at like a sliver, dude. Like they were not believing in me much. I had like 120 people and they were like ready to bounce. But let's touch on like some of the game mechanics and stuff here. So it only 11 levels, right? Like not on the face of it, not a long game, except that it is every review, every comment about it is a punishing game. It is difficult. It requires you to not throw your controller. But ultimately, like if you get the hang of it, and I think Philip, you had said in the Discord, you're like, just wait for the gameplay to click. Like once each level clicks for you, you can actually visualize and figure out the things. And then maybe the next 3 plays won't happen because the ball goes into a house and knocks something over or whatever. But like you can see the path to victory each time, even if it's cheaply taken away from you or just as cheaply given to you. There was one level where I was like, I'm never getting through this. And then I just happened to hit it into like a key. And I was like, oh, I'm done. Okay, that was great. Okay, I got a bunch of guys and everybody's happy. This is wonderful. But yeah, not a super long game. How did you guys cope with the frustration? I feel like both of you are very level-headed people, so maybe that's why we're having this conversation right now. No broken controllers.
Do you want to take this one, or can I take?
Go for it. Go ahead.
Go for it.
It's really like it's a good, and this is a good thing. It has a very arcadey aspect of like you just want to try again, but with progress instead of a high score. Instead of a high score, you have like the specific goal. And you can get a high score because you actually control how many troops get in. But you really want to get everyone. You really want to finish, so you fail, and then you try again. And like some levels it clicks right away, and it's really nice because you understand what you're doing and you breeze through it, and you're like, man, I am the best. And then you get to like, for me, I know a lot. This one also, I know this one stopped Dan as well, I believe, is the first boss. And you're just trying over and over again. And it's like, man, I didn't struggle this much since the first level when I barely knew how to play. But like slowly you start to understand what you need to do, and then you start to get better at doing it. And there's like this an addictive quality to just trying to nail it and trying to eventually play at it enough. I guess really weaponizes that whole one more time. And I think, again, the levels are short enough. I mean, some of them do get long near the end, but generally, but by that point, I think it's warranted. But because of how it's broken up, it may feel punishing, but the only punishment for failure is that you get to try it again.
Yeah, except like when you do fail, especially if you fail very quickly, and then Hideki is like, "What happened? What is wrong with you?" Or he'll ask you, "Are you okay?" The commentary, the little commentary, and the stuff from the troops too. I feel like, Sam, you were pointing this out when you were streaming it at one point. You were like, "Oh, the humanity." I mean, there was some great ones.
Tell my wife and children I love them.
Yeah, this is no way to die. It burns. Like, it's brutal, dude. It gets. Yeah.
Does this mean we're not getting a raise?
Did they say that?
I'm pretty sure they say that.
I do like that the troop commentary, because I'll forget, like if I walked away from this game for a few days and came back, I don't remember the commands. I got to go back in and look them up and figure it out. But they'll prompt you. They'll say, we need a push. You know, we need to do this. You need to rally us. We need support or something. They'll give you hints as to what you need to do as a commander, which is pretty cool. I also love the little Easter eggy kind of stuff where, I'd be playing the game and then I'd have to do something for work or whatever. And after like a minute or two, you'd hear the VO guy be like, "Are you there? Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's so fun.
Special lines that only play when you idle it's very Seaman in that as well.
So wait, have you played Seaman, by the way?
I haven't, but I've seen footage of it, and I generally know what it's about.
It kind of makes me want to pick it up. After this weird experience, I really am like, maybe I should get that. Like, I have a Dreamcast. I don't really use it much, but it seems like something that'd be fun to get. So yeah, another thing on this. So I never got the hang of rice balls. Can you explain to me like the rice ball situation? So you pick them up, you collect them throughout the thing. They look like bundles of hay or I guess rice or whatever. And you're supposed to, like, as you're commanding your troops and hitting this ball and figuring it around, you're also supposed to aim with the C stick or something like that and fire a rice ball tactically into a certain part.
So there is a cursor which you actually can move with the analog stick. It's kind of easy to lose. I would say like they would have done well to make it a little brighter, make it stand out on the map a little more. Cause I even on my second playthrough found myself not able to find my cursor quickly. Because you'll also naturally move it when you're tilting. Exactly. Because you can tilt or nudge to help control the ball as well. But that is where you're aiming your rice ball. And any troops, be they friend or foe, will be attracted to the rice ball. So you can use it to divert the enemy out of your troops' path and to make it so it's very easy to crush them all in one swoop or convert them if you happen to have the green power up. You can also give them to your own troops, and eating it will restore morale.
Man, that green power up is so fulfilling, by the way. Like when you get that and when that pops up on the screen, because I was always low on troops. It always hit me. And whenever I'd see that, that's my entire focus wound up going to the green energy thing. Because all of a sudden I can suddenly bolster my troop count. That's a really cool mechanic. It's super smart. It's also very frustrating when you get the green ball and then all your shots go askew and you miss everything and get like 2 troops the whole time. It's devastating. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I did not I believe the your own troops in the manual it said it was. I think it said it was because of their that the enemy troops were undisciplined and will just completely go upon the rice ball unhindered. But I believe you actually have to rally. You have to use a voice command to like.
That's right.
Direct your troops.
You can rally them to the rice.
Troops.
Now, Philip, you're in a dorm room. Sorry, is that right? You're okay. And Sam, you're at home. I admittedly, I've got a wife sleeping above me and a child above me and to the back. And so part of the problem that I had with this game is if I wanted to play it at 11 o'clock at night, I can't scream into a microphone. So did you guys run into any hurdles, even though it is a fun and off the wall and sometimes immersive way to really get you into this game? Do you have any problems using the microphone or like hiccups that you needed to work around in trying to actually pull that off?
I didn't really. For the most part, I mean, these are pretty simple commands. There's only maybe like a dozen of them. And of those, you're really only using like 4 or 5 frequently. So it responds pretty well. You don't have to be particularly loud. It's not like it's, shouting louder will boost your troops' morale or anything. So I think it works just fine. Some people do think the microphone clip is necessary, which did come with the box bundle that included the microphone. I don't have that, and I actually found everything working just fine by just kind of squishing the microphone into my palm in between the GameCube controller grip and my hand. And that held it securely enough that I could just hold the controller up to my face and press the X button because the microphone does work for those who haven't used it. Holding down the X button is also push to talk, as well as there's a button on the microphone itself.
Yeah, I never reached for the button on the microphone. I think the X button use was super smart. I just grabbed rubber bands off of a thing of asparagus from my refrigerator and kind of just taped it on there, and it worked really well. I
will say,
yeah, go ahead, Phil.
I will say, first off, a bit of a misconception. I don't actually have a GameCube at the dorm. I did this, since this was January, I did this over winter break. So I was at my house, which is so it's actually in my basement is where my GameCube is. So it's actually fairly isolated. But I actually had a bit of trouble adjusting to doing the voice commands. Just had trouble reading it. I had to play around with the sensitivity because there's an option for that. And I also had to school myself because I think sometimes I yelled and that disrupted because you get the emote, you yell and then it's not calibrated the same way as speaking it.
Yeah.
And so but luckily, I mean, they're pretty simple. So I can say rally 3 or 4 times in like a few seconds.
Yeah, Sam, Sam, I could see you being measured. Sorry to project this onto you, but I could see you just measuredly. I'm trying to remember back to your streams, just saying rally. Whereas me, I probably said it 4 or 5 times in the loudest tone because I'm just like in full panic mode. Not a very good general. And I found myself like just repeatedly yelling it over and over.
Well, and that's the interesting thing that I found was actually, you're not off base at all, because I found it actually one of the holes in my gameplay or in my strategy was that I assumed I only needed to say press forward once and that they would continue doing it. Whereas you actually do need to repeat it often,
really?
Particularly for some of the later stages where there is a lot of resistance for those last few inches because enemies will be spawning like right on top of you. Saying press forward once. Well, I assumed that if I didn't get through once, that there was something else I needed to do. Like I wasn't sufficiently clearing a path or something. But actually, I found that in several circumstances, just repeating press forward like 3 times to get them to use up all their morale was enough to get them over the edge.
Right.
I did also want to mention, so how I got Odama, I got it actually for $40 off eBay with a collection that contained the box, not the box, the case, the plastic case, and the manual and the clip. So I actually have the clip.
Nice.
And again, I still had issues with how it worked a bit. So like, I've seen people who are swearing that, oh man, I just can't do without the clip. I think it's just that the GameCube microphone is a little jank, and that like they're just imagining, because they don't have the clip, that the clip will make them better at Odama.
Nothing will make you better at
That,
Odama.
or they just have like accents or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, voice control has come a long way in even the last couple of years. So, I mean, I think the GameCube microphone is great for the time period it came from.
Yeah. I mean, Sam's doing this on the GameCube microphone actually right now. You don't even know it. It sounds great. I could see it right there.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. One thing I do want to mention on voice commands too, before we move on, is that I love the command flank and destroy. And I love that they named it that. Did you get it?
I don't think so.
You have to, because you do have to pick up the scrolls your first time through.
But where do you remember where it was? Because I got to
it's like the second or third stage. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it's hardly necessary. It can be helpful in a couple stages, but it's not one you really need to use so much.
But it sounds really rad.
Yeah, it's just because they could have, and even in the interest of making the microphone register it earlier, they could have just made the command flank or just surround or something like that. But to just sit there and say flank and destroy makes you feel like you're some mad genius general.
Hell yeah.
It just you have to have this kind of smug satisfaction every time you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also the command that I keep like, I failed that command a lot because it requires you have a certain amount of troops and a certain amount of space so you can encircle the enemy. So like 75% of the time I used that command, it ended in a horrible failure, but I kept using it because it was so fun to get to use it.
Like I said, I got to level 6. I feel like I'm going to go back to it and keep pushing through. Cause again, I got to the point in that level where I could see victory. I just couldn't feel it yet. Or I just hadn't gotten the hang of it yet. But as you progress in the game, does it feel like the difficulty is incremental beyond that? Because some of the stuff I experienced some weird spikes. There's obviously, I think Philip, you mentioned earlier, there's that like initial hit of like, man, I have no reference for this game. It's not like you play Metroid Dread and you've had experiences with platformers before or 3D shooters or anything like this. I mean, I'd love to talk some pinball video games with you guys in a minute, but like, this is wholly unlike almost anything I've ever played before. So that first level is very difficult when you're trying to figure it out. And then I got in a rhythm and got to the first boss. And that was, again, another brick wall to hit and work through. But I heard that the game, it's not like it really is an uphill slog. It is kind of like peaks and valleys and gives you points to breathe and reclaim a bunch of troops and build back up your strength for the next couple levels. Did you guys experience that when you're playing through? Philip, what did you experience?
I will say, and I'm going to come back to the voice commands eventually because I haven't actually said what I wanted to say about them. But I will say, yes, it was very peaks and valleys. But interestingly, when I talked to Sam on Discord, and maybe we can go over this, it appears that our peaks and valleys happened at different places.
Huh.
So for reference, the really hard bits for me, the initial hit, obviously, is just really confusing. I get the hang of it around levels 2 and 3. The first boss really hit me. The second boss also really hit me pretty hard. Spent a lot of time there, and then I actually, and then I think the final one is the town level. The town level was also a really hard one for me. But those are my major ones, the ones that stick out in my memory. But I remember talking about it in the Discord, and they weren't like the same ones that Sam had.
Yeah, the one that tripped me up my first playthrough the most was the Spider Temple. Obviously, there was a lot of difficulty in the first stage, a little bit on the first boss, but I think I adapted to that pretty quickly. By that point, most of the time, if I had trouble on a level, I was running out of time. I wasn't, actually getting the bell forced back or having the ball. So it was mostly about just figuring things out. And that meant that, by the second playthrough, I usually could get a lot of objectives out of the way a lot faster. But the spider temple, just getting the ball to circle the top of the hill to reveal the boss, I could not make that shot to save my life most of the time. It was a little easier my second playthrough, but the first playthrough, I got through the town on the first try. I don't know how. I just did. I just got lucky, I guess, because the second time it wasn't that easy. Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, the game it's only 11 stages, but each stage kind of has its own gimmicks to it. There's a couple that feel a little similar towards the beginning, as you're still kind of getting a footing on the main game. So it's really a matter of how well you adapt to the new wrinkles it adds.
Cool. Philip, what did you want to say about voice commands?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I kept cutting you off.
No, it just was a good time. Voice command. This is the best voice command. I just really admire its use of voice commands because they're like levels to incorporating any kind of gimmick. We're going to classify voice commands as a gimmick here. And a lot of times people don't like gimmicks like voice commands, particularly because the most common way to implement them is just to throw them in with no thought because, man, oh man, this sure is cool. And that's usually forgotten. But I find that people usually forget that they're like good implementations of voice commands. And this is probably the best implementation of the GameCube microphone there is, because first off, there's a thematic purpose for it. All of your voice commands are directly tied to troop movement, and thus it gives you the feeling of being a general. And so there's a thematic reason. The same reason why Skyward Sword has you have motion controls. We see on the Switch that it works just fine with a stick, but the reason you'd want to do it is so like thematically you're swinging the sword with Link, and thus Odama has that thematic element. But Odama also has something that I think is even rarer. And that is just that the voice commands serve the game, like mechanically just are necessary to make the game work because like every single button on that controller is being used. Like you have to use including the D-pad, the stick, and both sticks are being used. So you can't direct your troops with either of those because C-stick will in later levels, you use to swap between places. The analog stick is used to tilt the board and also move the controller. The D-pad is used to select targets in later levels, rallying becomes really important. So you need that. Obviously you have the flipper buttons. And then like A and B are like your projectiles and stuff. So like everything is being used. And since the main challenge of this game, especially the beginning, is that multitasking element, doing a bunch of things at once while you're like working with them, having to keep track of all the buttons while having the voice commands layered on top is really helps add a dimension of multitasking to it, which adds to the challenge of the game. And that thematic element of you being moving the troops helps your mind keep track of what is a voice command and what is a button command. So it's just a really tightly made system of controls that like work to influence each other and remind you that just because voice commands are unconventional and oftentimes forced into places where they don't matter, aren't very well utilized, doesn't mean that there aren't advantages that can come from this way of controlling that aren't offered by buttons. Because if they just had a control with more buttons, it would get really confusing trying to like tap over. That's why the bongos wouldn't really have worked very well.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe you also weren't a fan of Hey You Pikachu, Philip, I'm guessing.
No, this actually comes from my frustration with people. It's actually as adapted from my frustration of how people will decry anything with motion controls, even when there's good use of motion controls. So then I saw a good use of voice commands, and I was like, oh man, I can analogize to this really well. That like this is how you use a gimmick well, even if it's not. I have examples for motion controls used well, but obviously that's not an Odama thing. So my frustration actually just comes from people decrying gimmicks before like thinking that just because it's often misused doesn't mean it can't be intelligently used.
I'm so glad there's no motion controls in this game.
Yeah, and I think a good deal of that also comes from the frustration of having to learn something new. I mean, all of us said like that first level's hard because it's just unlike anything else we played. And, frustration is an obstacle, and not everybody's going to want to overcome that obstacle. And I think it's fair to say on some level, like, no, I don't have the time to put in to learn a new game. I can't assume that I'll like it, even if I do master it. But I've always been somebody who looks for that stuff just because every now and then you find something really great.
Yeah. Now, we were talking about not having a ton of experience going into this game to pull from, or a pool to pull from. Did you guys play pinball games at all growing up in any capacity, either digital or physical?
Very limited. Yeah. For me.
I mean, not really. I didn't have a lot. I had like this one Wii game, Wilson Pinball, but I never played it very much. I never got the hang of it. I couldn't get it to work. My mind couldn't. And it has all these fairly realistic graphics that don't actually mesh well to making a understandable interface to a child. Because
really?
It simulated being in the arcade. So you go up to the arcade and like you do it, and like that just for me that just made a bunch of extra stuff to look at, and I was really confused about like how it actually was. But I have experience with a pinball sub game that I actually played a ton as a child.
Please.
And that is what?
Kirby. It's got to be the Kirby pin. Isn't there a Kirby pinball game?
There is.
Okay.
But Kirby Pinball Land is a Game Boy game, and I grew up in the Wii era.
Sorry.
But it is Kirby. It's actually a side mode off of Kirby Mass Attack called Kirby Brawl Ball. You got the Kirby bit right, but it's not its own Kirby game. It's not a full-on pinball game. It's just a little side mode in another spin-off of Kirby, but it's super cool. Or at the very least, I had a lot of fun just playing that for hours on end. Just playing Kirby Brawl Ball.
I'm a little jealous that Wii game, admittedly, there's two of them. There's two pinball collections for the Wii that I just discovered a few months ago. I didn't know that existed. And I've been eyeing them. They're not that expensive. And I've been eyeing them because they do have realistic recreations of legendary pinball tables. I have a pinball arcade that opened up near me about a year or two ago, right in the middle of COVID, which wasn't great idea. It wasn't a great idea, but they've got some classic ones, including this table called Pinbot, which is like this legendary, like one of the like originators of progressive, like cool light design and modular pieces and stuff like that. And that's in that Wii game that you're talking about. They remade Pinbot in that, and so now I kind of want to have Pinbot at home, and I'm kind of jealous. Like I think I'm going to pick this up after playing through Odama a bunch. I don't know about you guys. Did you play Sonic Spinball at all, either on the Wii Genesis era? No. What about Metroid Prime Pinball? No Metroid Prime Pinball?
Still no. The more recent stuff, which I did play before Odama, was Yoku's Island Express on the Switch.
I was going to ask,
which is also a very different take on pinball. It's kind of like pinball meets kind of a Metroid style exploration.
I loved that game. I thought it was great. You would like launch yourself. It was easier to control. You could launch yourself into different areas, and you found yourself basically on new pinball tables for each kind of region you broke into. And then you hit yourself back into older spots to reopen new things. And then there was, if you still have your Wii U, Philip, you should get Star Wars Pinball. I mean, it's one of the best digital pinball games that's been released like in history. It's so good.
Is it only digital? Like, is it going to be affected by the Wii U eShop closing?
Actually, that's an interesting question. I think it's only digital. Yeah. So it might be affected
by one on the list.
Yeah, that's a good call.
I've been compiling a list of things to get before the eShop dies.
Yeah.
A horrible death.
Oh, you know what? You can get it physically for the Switch, though. So they re-released it for the Switch, and you can get it physically there.
I might just get that later because I don't have a lot of money right now. Mm-hmm. So even if I have to pay more later, that's worth it because right now I'm in college. So as little money as I have to spend now to get the stuff that's exclusive and I know I'm going to regret not having, including several exclusive Kirby games, is and also an exclusive in America Rhythm Heaven game. Thanks, guys.
Wow.
Europe got a physical yeah, I don't know. I'm getting off track.
It's all good. It's all good. So let's dive back into Odama real quick. So I didn't get to the end of the game. Do we want to talk spoilers for how things progress in the game at all, Sam? What do you think?
I have one other thing to say about pinball, though.
Please.
I think to me it was because as with Yoku's Island Express, I think it's not so much I wasn't interested because of the pinball. I was just interested because it was so unique by combining pinball with these other elements. It's really more about the genre fusion. And that's what I see in a lot of, there's a game on Steam that it's still early access now, but it's called Peglin and it's a pachinko roguelike. Like I have no interest in pachinko games otherwise, but I'm like, you know what? This is a roguelike that's doing something different. I like it. But the genre has been called military pinball. And I just wanted to share some of this from an old Nintendo Power I dug up on archive.org. This is from Nintendo Power issue 204. That's June 2006. There was an interview with Yut Saito about Odama. I definitely recommend any interview you can find with this guy. He's just so interesting. And I mean, keep in mind, Nintendo fans, like he was actually a pretty close friend of both Miyamoto and Iwata. And they would just get together and like share ideas and stuff. He gets like really into specific hobbies and then he winds up turning them into games nobody else would make. He was actually supposed to make a game called Mario Motors for the 3DS, which was going to involve not just Mario racing. We already have that in Mario Kart, but Mario sculpting engine blocks out of solid hunks of metal. And I kind of wish it was a real thing, but it presumably got canceled because the 3DS is not really around anymore. But he was asked what genre it is. So Nintendo Power asks, gamers may now call Odama a military pinball game, but what do you call it? And this is his answer. I think that game genre names are currently very poor. RPG, action, strategy, simulation, adventure, all of these are seriously limited in their descriptive power. The themes of games as well are currently restricted to a narrow range. Therefore, we're seeing many games that are similar to each other. I'm a game designer, and to me, a game designer is a person who creates a new grammar of gaming, not simply a person who produces just another game. When I create a game, publishers always ask me the same question: what category does this game fit into? I always answer by naming an entirely new genre that my work belongs to. In Odama's case, and this doesn't translate so well into English, I gave it the genre name of falling castle action by sheer force of numbers. Sounds like a joke, but I'm dead serious when I've said that.
That's amazing. Say it again. Falling castle by numbers.
Falling castle action by sheer force of numbers. So presumably it sounds better in Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty good.
Picking through that falling action castle through numbers. We have the numbers, but with the Odama here, theoretically it means that through the sheer amount of your number, like a game where through force and like a feeling of force, I think, and it's trying to emulate that feeling in you. You can feel yourself pushing down other people's castles. I think that's kind of the vibe it probably has in Japanese. It just doesn't really have a distinct name in English.
Yeah. And like you said, shout out to Yut Saito. He is a kindred spirit with a lot of the people that we love as Nintendo and retro game fans. And I saw that after like he kind of paused game development in like 2013, 2014, and actually went off and created an app called Earthbook, which is this interactive globe that you can kind of scroll through time and stop on a certain year. And then when you stop it, you can twirl around the globe to different regions and countries and see what was going on at that time anywhere on the globe, which is such a cool idea. Like I've got to find this thing now. He released it in 2015. I doubt it's still available, but I looked this up earlier and I read like the kind of description of it and saw some demo of it. And I was like, man, I wish I knew that this existed. It seems awesome. But hopefully he comes back to games. There's been talk that he's gonna return back. He created, I never played Sim Tower, but I've watched videos of that and it seems really cool too. I mean, the guy has made some really, really neat stuff.
Well, and he better, because as you mentioned, the ending, there is a to be continued.
No,
at the very end of the credits.
Yeah.
There's simply a to be continued. It's not really a cliffhanger.
All right, hold on. Everybody's got to switch off if you don't want to know the ending. I need to know the ending. Because I saw, Sam, when you streamed, I saw some of it. I saw some of it where you time warp and then the narrator is just like, who are these people? This is who we fought for. This is the world that we fought so hard to create, or something to that effect.
Yeah. Right? So you shoot the ball through a opening in the fort on the last stage, and then you wind up in present day Tokyo. And you can recruit people there. You actually have no timer in this area, and your ball is constantly green. So Amazing. anyone it rolls over will be recruited to your side, join your army, and you can actually just keep going as long as you want. You also are destroying buildings and trains and cars because you do.
Yeah. And interestingly, you can actually miss this area entirely because it's in that portal. I was like 3/4, I was like a half of the way through the boss fight before I actually managed to get my Odama in the portal and get to the modern day for the first time. It's entirely missable, although it is hinted at in the manual.
You warp during the boss fight? It's not its own level?
You can do it as many times as you want, actually. So as soon as you let the ball fall back through, you'll come back out to the main area. And you can, it's basically infinite reinforcements. The last stage is actually quite easy for this reason.
Yeah. But it is quite cool, and it's thematically quite nice. I like when you just drop in and they're like, oh, these must be the ancestors. Well, surely, if you recruit them, they'll be confused at first, but they'll have noble blood, and they'll get it. They'll get the hang of it real quick. And then sometimes when you recruit them, they'll be like, "What's going on?" Just like totally indoctrinated.
I love those little immersive notes. I mean, the fact that there are little characters that are ostensibly controlling your paddles and stuff, everything, it feels like Toy Story or whatever. There's like these little clockwork pieces. It's not just, okay, we stuck some paddles on the field. Like there's actually supposedly little soldiers that are controlling this Odama weapon. And maybe they were ripped right out of the 20th century. And
so for the final ending, once you've defeated the boss and returned the bell to its rightful place, a miracle takes place. So for all the sadness of, the people you've killed with the Odama, enemy and friend alike, they actually all return to life at the end, as the bell rings out across through the land and peace is restored.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
And then you are treated to the credits and the most incredible closing number of all time, done by Vivarium's in-house band.
Wow.
Called Don't Panic, I think.
Yeah, I think it was called Do or Die, Don't Panic. I saw it in the credits here. Again, if you get this game, like Sam mentioned earlier, get the manual. Like it's not that much more expensive, and it comes with this additional insert that has a map of the thing and a breakdown of every one of the 11 levels. Like super helpful and cool to reference.
It was
Cold and Bold by Don't Panic. That's what it was. Sorry, Sam.
I mean, I also it's like fold out. Like I can't imagine how much more money you have to do to like invest in like a fold out thing for the map. So like this is just doors and you open it up and you get the full map.
Yeah.
As well as, but yeah, I read the manual before I play any retro game. Usually I just use a PDF, but I had the full thing for this one. But it's always important to read the manual because that was what you're expected to do. And if you jump into a game, you're not really getting the authentic experience if you just jump into it blind like you do these days, because like you could be missing vital information. And that manual was a real treat. So it'd be really sad if you didn't read it.
Yeah, it was tough when you were renting games back in the day. Like it was such an inherent thing that you were expected to read a game manual when you played a game. But if you were the kid who had to rent from Blockbuster or especially from just the local Mr. Video or whatever, like you weren't usually getting the manuals, or sometimes you'd luck out and get like handwritten instructions. I rented The Adventures of Link for NES, and I got like someone's notes that they had jammed in there, and it kind of helped out. Do you guys have any other thoughts or anything else you want to touch on? I know we talked a lot of Odama, a lot of military RTS pinball here tonight.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of stuff. I think I can always talk about more things and get into more detail. I never know how in detail to get to stuff, but also I just wanted to share something interesting. It said in the beginnings of level 10, it was like, don't use it was saying something about being careful about using your troops. Like, don't send out troops just to die. And I interpret that as don't send out troops. So I first tried this level. I did the entirety of that level just using rice bombs to lure the enemy to places and then killing them with the Odama.
Oh my gosh.
Thus avoiding all of the instant death traps in that level until the final push when I released everyone all at once.
And is that what you were supposed to do, or that's just
no?
No.
I am almost 100% sure. You're supposed to like be careful about your troops because there's a lot of death traps in that level.
Okay.
And I had like 400 in reserve.
Well, and the thing about that level too is that if you run out of troops, you might be in an unwinnable spot at that point. Like if you accidentally killed all your own troops, because unlike much to the other levels, there are not like constant waves of new enemies and replenishing power-ups. Depending where you get stopped, you might not have access to anything. So you do need to be careful about running out for sure.
I do my strategy. It was really fun, and it was surprisingly effective to do this. I had so many rice balls built up because you usually forget about them. And like, it actually worked very well. It went smoothly. I got the thing first try.
Nice. And we have that lovely, Sam's got it on his screen behind him. I think is it the Beast Monk? Sai? Is that who the Spider-Man is?
Yeah. This is the boss of the Spider Temple. He is a large, bald human face with spider legs.
Ridiculously unsettling.
And he eats people.
It's outrageous. Like
if you look up that Nintendo Power I mentioned, there is concept art of him, which shows him eating people, which is even better. That's also in our Discord on the Odama-rama channel. I had to share that.
Yeah, it's funny because there's like this balance of obviously a lot of fantasy in this, but then a lot of like real tones to all of it. And then you just see a giant human head eating people on spider legs. And you're like, where am I? This isn't feudal Japan. What are you talking about?
Oh, that really happened. Obviously.
You weren't there.
That's true. Yeah. I was not there. Anything else, guys?
We never talked about the progression system, which is kind of unique, actually.
Tell me.
Because, again, like this I haven't really seen done. The amount of troops you get in one level is how many troops you get. Like the amount of troops you manage to push through at the end is how many troops you get at the end of the level. And then that's what carries on to the next, which I think is very interesting. But I mean, it doesn't really affect things too much because most of them have places where you can recruit I never felt myself needing to restart a level, previous level, because I could always build up enough troop, which is good because it kept it from being a frustrating mechanic. But it is an interesting mechanic.
It's also why you usually have like 50 rice balls by the end of the game.
Yes, because those stack up. Interestingly, although I will say, I like it. It's an interesting novel system. I do think if they made an Odama 2, which they definitely should, because microphone technology is better now, and I think this could really work well. But if they make an Odama 2, I probably wouldn't want to keep it because it does come at the cost of like mobility. Like once you beat a level, you can't go back to it because unless you want to erase your progress, because otherwise the troop numbers won't be consistent. So if you go back a level, basically your win is gone.
Right. Now, if you beat the game. If you beat the game, you do unlock a separate mode where you can select the levels and you actually have preset amounts that you start with that do not change.
That was that free play mode, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I was thinking about playing it. I never checked it out. But yes, there is a free play mode, but you do have to get through the entire game before you do that. And as we mentioned, this game is kind of hard. That being said,
it's not long, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's not always hard. And interestingly, once you beat it, you enter New Game Plus mode. It actually asks you if you want to save at the end because that triggers New Game Plus mode, or you want to stay with all your progress. Because once New Game Plus mode is, you can't activate your old save file. You can only play the lowest through free play and build up again. Where you keep all of your items, like your rice balls and stuff, but I think your troop numbers. Well, I don't remember if the troop numbers reset or if you keep the same troop numbers, but I know the items stay the same, and basically you have to start at level 1 again, and you can't access the past versions of your save file.
Is it safe to say to both of you that in 2026, when we're playing our Switch Pros and have a GameCube Virtual Console, that you'll be hoping that this is released, but it probably never will be?
I mean, sure, why not? I think that's probably the most likely way we're going to get it. I don't see there being a huge market for like a remake of Odama, but stranger things do happen.
Do you think that with this hypothetical GameCube Switch Online, which is not the same thing as the Virtual Console, because that's not actually owning the games, but that's the whole thing. But do you think that as well as selling the GameCube controller, they're gonna also just sell the original microphone hardware?
No way. No way. But maybe they sell it.
That would be a lot. I mean, you'd presumably have it'd be like a USB or something, because the original plugs into it plugs into the memory card port on the GameCube.
Yeah, so. But they could, if they wanted to, they could put in some sort of a microphone component to a re-released GameCube controller. As we addressed at the top of the episode, it's not really a whole lot that they used the microphone for. So unless you're going to re-release Mario Party 6 and 7, and even those, you don't really need it that much. So
yeah, I would say even for Odama, like it would be functional. It wouldn't be ideal, but it would be functional to have the voice commands simply become like a radial menu. Yeah. Like hold down ZL and, select, because there's only about a dozen of them with one of the sticks. Yeah. Like the right stick, presumably, if that's one that's only, the C stick was only used to switch between positions. So it just wouldn't do that if you were holding down the command button. Yeah.
And I passionately believe that would make for a worse game, because simply it very much so. It's definitely not nearly as elegant of a solution as the voice commands. Sure. And it feels clumsy, but if they really wanted to, they definitely probably could find a mechanical way to work around it. But I think that would destroy
It also does away with any excuse to yell at your TV, which is super fun
we
to do.
already know that the Switch has the capability to, interface with a Bluetooth headset. So there's a way to do that. I just don't know what that looks like on the software end at all.
Right.
I'm sure it would not be simple to get a GameCube game to do that, but it's probably possible. It's just a question of, is there anybody at Nintendo that sees that much value in doing it so that they can re-release Odama and maybe the Mario Party games?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to this, but have we ever seen, because this is a Nintendo published property, I'm assuming that they own some sort of rights to it, but we've never seen any representation of the Beast Monk or anything in Smash, or I've never seen any sort of Odama Easter egg or something like that. You guys don't know of anything like that, right?
I do not know of any. So if there is, it would be on the level of like a sticker in Smash.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's even spirits, because most of those aren't pulling from obscure GameCube games.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like, I'm tempted to say there's nothing, because like they'll make assist trophies out of like anything. Or not assist trophies, but like they're just the trophies on the wall. They throw a lot of just really like, we have a spirit. Yeah, we have not even a spirit. Just like the little trophy figure you put on the wall. Like, bro, there's like a lot of that. So like, it's definitely not impossible, but it's definitely. I can't think of an instance of it.
Yeah, it's in the same bucket as Geist and a few of those other first party or Nintendo published things that just don't get represented anywhere. Come on, Eternal Darkness. I see you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Geist does have a spirit in Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Really? All right. It could be.
I might be wrong there.
All right. And I'm really salty about Odama.
I know there's a fair amount of I get really grumpy that there's not like, I know that there's not stronger Rhythm Heaven stuff in Odama, like, because Odama and Geist, they're kind of a bit on the weirder side, on like but Rhythm Heaven just fits with the Nintendo vibe like so well.
Yeah,
it's always made me grumpy.
Yeah, it just gets cameos in WarioWare.
Yeah.
Well, cool, guys. Sam, do you have any other thoughts or anything you want to hit on?
Everybody should buy Odama and play it.
I can recommend, but it is kind of hard, because if you don't have a GameCube or a Wii, and I know everyone had a Wii, but now everyone has a Switch, and I understand it might be hard to get that kind of thing. It's not the most accessible thing. A lot of the Retro Rewind stuff was stuff that was just on the Switch. And this isn't that. And maybe we could see that reflected in the fact that there's not many people here. And also it's hard to make progress in it, which I think is the other reason that we don't see very many of us here. But it is definitely worth it, I think, to both the barrier of entry of getting it and the microphone, which isn't that expensive, but still it's a lot of stuff. And I think it's worth it though, and I also think it's worth it to get like fairly good at it, because and like just to beat it at the very least once, because I'm very glad I did. It was a thoroughly enjoyable experience, and I really like how elegantly it uses the voice commands.
I would say if you have a temper, probably not the game for you, but otherwise, yeah, there's definitely a feeling of accomplishment. I definitely felt, as I broke through some of the barriers of challenge, I definitely felt good about that next achievement. And it did make me want to come back and play more. You just need to have the time to get good, right? You just need to be able to sit there and focus and learn the mechanics and kind of figure out how to multitask. But
it really is the Plock of the GameCube.
No,
no.
I mean, it's fair enough because Plock also required a lot of you needed to really focus and find those fleas, man. There was a lot of weird things that happened in that game where you just kind of had to not throw the controller. So I'm gonna back you on that, Sam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks, guys. I mean, this was great. This is a good way to cap off Odama-rama, and I hope everybody's jumping into Breath of Fire Brewery. It feels like something from Bob's Burgers, and that's fine because I love Bob's Burgers. But yeah, Breath of Fire Brewery. Hopefully, everybody's enjoying their time with one of those, or either.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, that's covering the whole series. Breath of Fire 1 and 2 are on Nintendo Switch Online on the Super Nintendo app, so those are the most accessible. 3 and 4 are expensive in their original forms. They were once available on the PlayStation Store. I don't believe they are any longer. Maybe you can track down the PSP remakes of those if they're available. Dragon Quarter is only on the PS2, but it is actually not that expensive. I liked it a lot, but I like weird stuff. So, be warned. I actually finished it recently and it was great.
I'm playing the original on the NSO, but I'm afraid I will, when it comes to Breath of Fire, I will take the position of Liam with the relatively inexperienced one, because I don't, with school starting up again, I'm no longer in spring break. I don't really have the time to dedicate a lot of energy to it. So I'm not sure how far I'm on the solo Nina part, but I'm not sure if I'll actually, I think her name's Nina, the second party member basically. But I'm not sure if I'll get much farther just because, things are getting crazy over here and stuff.
Life gets in the way.
But if you like Breath of Fire or just want to check out Breath of Fire, hang out with us on our Discord and drop your comments in there. We'll have a special episode of Retro Logic coming up where we'll have a guest and we'll read all those comments on the show to discuss them. So that about does it for Odama. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a wonderful time.
To you. The lovely phrases that spoken out from your lips. All alone, the only the strength you revised is such as a bow that strikes bring back all the arms and pride behind the dark. Sing up all the jerks and jocks up to the wall. I love Vista, Buena Vista, como esta, obvio testa, be gone. Sensation is gone.